Sometimes things happen and then you question where is the humanity in man? Where is humanity amongst mankind, amongst brothers, friends, neighbors? And of course, when we ask these kinds of questions, it takes a mind back to how long people have suffered. And then, of course, it raises another question. Should suffering make people to not have compassion, to not have sympathy, to not have concern about each other? These questions will leave us pondering for a long time, but that is the state of the nation called Nigeria, where people are eager to do a whole lot of things regardless of how the next person suffers. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine. It's the Friday edition, and as always, coming to you live on Spectrum Television, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the very beautiful city of Akwa Ibom State. Of course, on Rise and Shine, we'll always take you around the latest developing stories from all around the world, Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria, Africa, and of course, the continent of the world. My name is Francis Oyemide. Glad to welcome you on board. Of course, you also know that I'm not always going to be here alone. I always would have with me the company of an amazing personality. But just before letting you see her gorgeous face this morning, I'd like to ask Nigeria, how are you? Africans, how are you? With all the things that is happening around the world, the crisis, the war, you know, the attendant effect that is coming to developing countries such as Nigeria and other African countries, how are you coping? Just yesterday, I had conversations with some group of, persons questioning how this year's Christmas is going to be like, what they're going to eat, what kind of celebration is going to happen. And I couldn't help but wonder how a lot of us are doing in this particular time. Well, we do hope that however the situation and whatever happens, that you find the strength and courage to stand through this period. Because as they say, if it doesn't get bad, if it doesn't get worse, if it doesn't kill us, it definitely does make us strong. Good morning, Oyai.
Good morning, Francis. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. Beautiful Friday morning. It is a good day to rise and shine. Of course, we're excited. The holidays are, encroaching upon us, and we do hope that it is going to be one holiday to remember, especially because of all of the things that are happening around the world. Of course, do well to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find at SpectrumTv Live. Of course, our Twitter handle, SpectrumT Online, is also very active. Do well to like, share, comment, and let's get your thoughts on some of these issues. I particularly like that we have one advertorial on our screens that shows us exactly how to scan your decoders, and have us, how to refer us also to someone else, to watch us either on Star Times or on free to air. All of those things are available. But thank you for choosing Spectrum, and thank you for choosing Rise and Shine this morning. Of course, we are here to talk Nigeria, and it's Friday. Already a lot of things have happened. I think one of the juiciest things I saw is a debate around the fact that Naira is depreciating. But you needed to see the face that Francis just gave me. It's like, Naira is depreciating, but when it depreciates from like 1,050 to 1,000, that's not depreciation. When it depreciates from like 1,000 to 600 or 500, then we can now say that
It's still not it.
It's still not.
It's still not it. But when it goes back to normal, I mean,
what's normal? What do you say is normal?
Between 300, 400, fluctuating in between those, and Nigerians would understand. But when you're talking about 500, 600, that's literally like telling Nigerians who are not promising anything. It might definitely land at 800 or 700. So,
but there are speculations that the Naira is going to begin to do well. Remember that the federal government did borrow some $10 million to invest to cushion the Naira to perform well. So let's hope that, maybe before the holidays sink in, would be able to have, money to spend.
I do hope we get that. But if in the last almost 1 month plus of all the attempts and the processes and the policies made by Kodaso and the CBN leadership, we are getting to 1,000 to $1. Is it within the last couple of days before the Ember period or the December festivities that we're going to see the difference? Well, if it does happen, congratulations to the leadership of the Apex Bank and the federal government. Of course, Nigerians will celebrate that. But if it doesn't happen, I think Nigerians are learning every day to try and survive, regardless of what is happening.
I think the song on my mind for you this one is Nothing Where God No You do. You know, we need some respite in this country. It's been a long journey. But then let's look at the things that we have on Rise and Shine this morning. Some of the things that we are going to be talking about this morning. Of course, we also see the fact that for the gubernatorial elections happening in 3 states, tomorrow being the 11th of November, we see that police has identified 5 violence-prone local governments in Bayelsa State. That's one of the things that we have this morning. We also see the fact that military has adopted gender policy to protect women, children during conflict. Of course, if you're following the war in Hamas and Israel right now, you know that the worst hit people are, you know, civilians, they are children, and they are women, upwards in their thousands as we speak. We're also looking at the, we also see the fact that Justice Alaba Omolaye has urged public against perceiving justice from the prism of sentiment. That's something that we've had the judiciary really try to speak up about in the last couple of months, especially 2023, with all that happened with the obedient movement and all the sentiments that flew around. The judiciary has been trying to get Nigerians to really understand that, you know, judgment doesn't fly by sentiments. We also see the fact that, of course, Nigeria and Saudi Arabia have signed an MOU on energy cooperation. It's good to also put it out there that the president traveled to Saudi Arabia, landed there yesterday for some official duties. Of course, federal government is tackling labor over strike. Unions disrupt IMO flights, of course. And there's still the story around Fubara and Nyesom Wike of Rivers State. And Fubara is declaring that Wike remains his principal. These are some of the things that we have on the table for discussion, and so much more that will be brought to you on the platform of Rise and Shine this morning.
Well, of course, a lot is happening. I'm particularly concerned. I don't know how the River State people would react to the fact that Fubara has come out to say, me and Wike remains my principal. What are the terms of their settlement? Because there were a lot of, you know, accusations, a lot of grapevine spreading about the former governor of River State seeking to be paid, is it 2 billion or more on a monthly basis from the state's allocation, and all of that issues. Of course, we saw the drama from the bombing of the State House of Assembly to the planned impeachment of Fubara. So how has that issue been settled? It's not enough for, you know, Fubara to come out and tell like Riverians that you know, the issue between him and Governor Nyesom Wike, or former Governor Wike, now FCT minister, has been resolved. He needs to tell the people what are the terms of that, you know, resolving that crisis. Will it amount to you spending state's funds on the person of Governor Nyesom Wike? Will it amount to you not being the governor of the state, or having to wait for directive from Wike before you can do anything in your state? The people would definitely want to know this, but regardless of what the terms are at the moment, I think the first thing that needs to be appreciated is the fact that there is calm and peace, and some level of serenity has returned to River State.
Well, that is something that we can hope will, you know, bolster well for the people of River State and Fubara himself. Let's see. Let's hope that more trouble does not come out of these. You know, now that it looks like they have decided to kiss and not tell, let's hope that it's going to continue to go very well. Let there be no fresh uprising. But let's go to the very top of our flash news this morning. The military has adopted gender policy to protect women and children during conflict. We know that insecurity continues to be a major problem across the world. It is a problem in Africa, and it is a problem in Nigeria. Of course, in recent weeks and recent months, we've continued to hear of the uprising and the re-emergence of kidnappings and, you know, other insecurity-related activities up north and even in other parts of the country. But there are some areas, you know, in Nigeria that are worse hit than others. Now, with all of this, the Nigerian military has looked into the fact that there are people that are more susceptible to becoming victims in the face of all of this conflict, and they decided to adopt the gender policy in protection of women and children. Of course, the defense headquarters says the asymmetric nature of current security challenges in the country has made the military and other security agencies adopt a more realistic gender mainstreaming strategy to defend and protect women and children during conflict. Of course, the armed forces of Nigeria attained 27.9% female participation in peace support operations as against the 17% benchmark recommended by United Nations, so that we can see that there's a good synergy right there between the Nigerian armed forces and the inclusion of women in the pursuit of peace. Of course, General Christopher Musa, who is the chief of defense staff, was saying this at a one-day gender mainstreaming conference organized by the defense headquarters in Abuja. Nigerian military is receiving the encomium for United Nations and Africa Union for adopting commendable gender mainstreaming policies. But let's see now. Some of the reports that we have reveal that armed forces of Nigeria have been able to, put some of these activities on ground just to make sure that they can handle. But let us see how much more work can be done. When you go to a crisis-prone area, implementation of this policy that has been adopted, how does the Nigeria military, want to go about it?
Well, one thing that is certain that I've been seeing in Nigeria in past times is that when crisis like situations happen, when insecurity happen, the military in reaction would literally just raid an environment without taking into consideration the fact that you have women and children. Take a mind back to what happened in a Synodum back in Akwa Ibom State sometime last year, or a few years back. I think this should be about 2 years since that incident happened, when we had military bombardment from the air. You cannot say the number of women and children who were affected. As a matter of fact, we still have an internally displaced persons camp as a result of that in a Synodum and around its environs. So having the military to draw up modalities and policies to prioritize gender equity, gender fairness, gender justice is definitely a step taken in the right direction. That means a lot more attention is going to be given to, or has been given and still will be given, as spoken of by General Musa, to the welfare of children and women when crises happen. And that, to a large extent, is one of the aspects of being professional, or one of the professional rules of engagement that people within and outside the shores of Nigeria have always been asking for. We've also seen that the military have said they won't let Nigerians down when it comes to the fight for insecurity. Of course, the Nigerian Air Force's chief made that comment. It also stated that the military is ahead of the insurgents and different terrorist groups. This one is where Nigerians will have a bit of a concern. If you're saying the defense headquarters, the Nigerian armed forces, the military are always ahead of the terrorists, how do you then explain the scenarios where men and women, personnel of the armed forces, are en route to a particular operation and they are ambushed and killed before they even get to the place of the operation? So these concerns will definitely raise a lot of questions to what the defense headquarters is saying. But be that as it may, Nigerians can't move away from the fact that these men have sacrificed a lot for our collective, peace and, security, and we need to commend them in their efforts, while also urging them to continue to double those efforts until we get to a point where terrorists and non-state actors are completely wiped out from, the forest, the streets, the communities in Nigeria, or reduced to the barest minimum that that they're no longer able or capable of making a muzzle.
Well, let's hope that that is going to be the experience with the adoption of this new gender policy to cater for women and children during conflict in the country, because of the new trends in which conflict is going. But let's move on from that. Police have identified 5 violence-prone local governments in Bayelsa ahead of tomorrow's elections. We know that as a widespread conversation to the build-up of this particular election, some of the speculations have been that violence may be a problem in most, polling units and most areas during this election in Imo, Kogi State and Bayelsa State. But we see the Nigerian police force highlighting 5 violence-prone areas in Bayelsa ahead of tomorrow's election. Of course, they said most politically volatile council areas in the state have been highlighted ahead of the Saturday's governorship election. Of course, this is, as it assured, the Nigerian police, of course, assured the people of the state that they would ensure a peaceful atmosphere before, during, and after the polls through adequate deployment of men and officers in collaboration with sister security agents. Of course, we have seen the Nigeria Police Force already deploy over 15,000 members of the Nigeria Police Force across the 3 states to handle the elections that will be happening tomorrow. But these 5 local governments, or these 5 areas that have been highlighted to likely be coming under some kind of violence, we do hope that there is a proactiveness on the part of the Nigerian police force to either stem it totally or manage it in such a way that it does not get in the way of the elections that must be held tomorrow in any of these states.
Well, it's definitely going to be issues of grave concern. I mean, you're looking at the power of the incumbent that is handled by the People's Democratic Party, Senator Doye Diri, who is currently the governor of Bayelsa State. You're also looking at the power of federal might playing out for the APC governorship candidate, Silva, who is also contending the elections. You're looking at the rest of the 16 political parties who are participating, Labour Party inclusive, alongside others. One thing that we cannot take away from election is the fact that no matter how much their principles, no matter how much people in position, the top contenders might be peaceful or might be pledging to ensure peace, security, stability during the electoral process or the electioneering period. The truth of the matter remains that some people will just not adhere strictly to that. It's like the game of football. People are playing football. The stars are playing games. They are making their money. But you find on the streets across Nigeria, across other countries of the world, people fighting, hurting themselves just because of arguing about football. And then you question the wisdom or the sanity in taking such action. So those scenarios are always going to play out as far as the electioneering period is concerned. There are people who are going to be a lot more overzealous. There are people who are going to try to make an extra effort in an attempt to want to please their principles. And in that attempt, in that material time, they're going to go overboard. And that is always a spate of violence. And don't forget, it always starts with an argument. It always starts with an argument or disagreement between, two different supporters of different political parties. And before you know it, there's a gang up of party loyalists on one side, on the other side. And before you know it, blows are being exchanged. Before you know it, stakes, clubs, and other things comes into play. Before you know it, there's a corpse in the ground as a result of that. But we do hope that the Nigerian security forces, having just 3 states to cover, will deploy, or by virtue of this intelligence report, double or triple the security presence in these particular flashpoint areas to help forestall any violent incident that might occur. Because the more police, the more security personnel you have, particularly in the red zones or the highlighted areas or local government area, the better it is to be able to calm the nerves of those who feel they can go cause trouble and then return back to their base.
Well, we know that the 2 biggest contenders in the Bayelsa State elections will be the incumbent, Governor Doye Diri, and Timipre Sylvia of the APC at this time. Those are like, the top 2 men had gone for that particular seat. But let us see how this does not, translate into a much bigger issue. We hope that there is a system on ground to maintain law and order whilst the election is going on tomorrow. But let's see also how proactive the Nigeria Police Force is going to be, especially like Francis has said, when you assign like double the people for those areas that have been highlighted, then we hope that they can stem everything. And I think another issue, I don't know whether it is a bit of, what would we call this, a bit of action movies that is getting into my head right now, but that maybe it's a psychological thing. By the time you highlight a particular area and then you take the attention of the security agencies to those places, it's not a matter where you just sit down and say, okay, these are the areas that have been highlighted, and you put all of your security mites there. You don't know if it's a decoy or a distraction for you not to pay attention in a certain place and then something happens elsewhere. So we know that the Nigerian police force is, abreast with how they go about their activities. We hope that there is balance and clarity in the line of duty to get the elections off the ground and land tomorrow peaceably as possible. But then let's move on from that particular story this morning also, and that will be on our way to our very last flash news for this morning. Justice Alaba Omolaye is urging public against perceiving justice from the prism of sentiment. Well, we basically have really talked about this. It's just with the trend of things that have happened in the country so far so good, and a lot of people believe that once we have those conversations on social media, it somehow translates into evidence against the people that are standing in the courts of jurisdiction, and also the extensions of having other people that have power, so to speak, and how they influence or attempt to influence the judgment of the court. Well, Justice Omolaye is saying that we need to promote fairness in justice, where it is not there who has who and who has what, can actually get their issues sorted as soon as possible.
Well, a lot of Nigerians will beg to differ at this point, especially judging from the comment coming from the retired Justice Datijo at this point in time. I mean, when you're telling Nigerians to not be concerned whether a case was fairly decided, rather whether the justices from their geopolitical zones were on the panel that decided the case, you are looking at moving from the constitutional provisions of the standard, the rules of engagement that has been set as far as the Nigerian judiciary is concerned. If you're supposed to have judges from the 6th geopolitical zone, it should be represented. And of course, if it is not represented, it's going to raise a question mark. It is not to say that those judges from the other political zones or geopolitical zones are going to decide in the favor of their zones. It is a matter of having enough hands. There's a reason why the Americans, they have a jury system outside the judge that sits in the law court. And there's a reason why the jury would vote. There is a reason why a stipulated number of judges are supposed to sit over the case. And those reasons cannot be ruled out as far as the provisions of the law is concerned. So when you're asking Nigerians to not be concerned about the number of judges who sit to argue a case or who sit to look into a case, you're definitely already tilting the verdict that is going to come. Now, let's look at 6 to 4. It's supposed to be 6 and then you have 4. How do you balance? Let's say maybe it's supposed to be 7 and then you have 3. How is it going to be balanced? Because when you have 7, you have the likelihood of 4 against 3, you have the likelihood of 5 against 2 or 6 or all 7. So it raises a whole lot of concern. Yes, Nigerians are concerned about justice being served across board. Nigerians are concerned about fairness. Nigerians are concerned about speedy trials in the Nigerian judiciary and being able to ensure that cases are judged based on the provisions of the Nigerian constitution and in line with the evidence that are being provided. If the justice was coming out to tell Nigerians, I mean, if you want to focus on the verdict, let it be verdict based on the provisions of the law, verdict based on the level of evidences that have been presented before the law court and how the witnesses have been able to speak to those evidences, how the lawyers who have been contracted to argue those cases are able to put forth their case. Because we know, as far as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is concerned, these are the indices that is being looked for in the law court. The social media charade is irrelevant, is inconsequential. The opinions of Nigerians on social media is inconsequential. What matters most is the evidence that is being presented in the law court. And as far as those evidence and how the witnesses, the credibility of the witnesses and how the witnesses speak to those evidence is concerned, those are the measures, those are the indices that will determine what the verdict of each case is going to be. So Nigerians would agree, yes, we need fairness, we need justice, we need equity. But don't tell Nigerians we don't need to look at the number of judges that sits over a case, because whether or not you admit it, those numbers were created for a purpose and they have a very significant reason to play or role to play.
Well, I think just to piggyback on what you're saying, we know that this, vacancy at the Supreme Court has recently surfaced as a very big issue. remember the retired justice, one of the things that he did highlight is that the number of judges that ought to sit at the Supreme Court are currently not available, and there are, you know, certain geopolitical zones in Nigeria that are not represented on the board, you know, of judges at this time. And that is, you know, that doesn't sit well when we are talking about making sure that justice is served as and when due. So when we look at the fact that these judges have either they have retired or they've passed away, what are the modalities in place by the federal government to make sure that, you know, people are scouted and promoted to that rank of being, you know, justices in the Federal Republic of Nigeria? So that will also stem when, you know, someone from geopolitical zone A and B know that they have a strong judicial voice in the midst of all that is happening, then, you know, people will, I believe, really rest to a large extent trusting the jury system to get justice for all issues happening around them. But of course, we see the fact that more people are retiring, but it seems to be that the system is slow to fill up, you know, that gap. Remember, just to the position of the Attorney General of the Federation, it took such a long while before, you know, experts began to cry out that the fact that there is no sitting AGF on that particular seat is a big problem for the department, the agencies, and, you know, all of that. And AGF needs to sit so that they can get certain signatures appended and certain jobs done. So let's see if the federal government is going to take this seriously, because one thing is to come out and tell Nigerians you can't always, you know, have an opinion, so to speak, and think that it's going to influence how you know, a judgment is delivered. If there is a way for you to submit your evidence and make it, you know, strong enough and have the requisite hands well represented to make an argument, then that will be it, and we should give a lot more people rest and confidence in the Nigerian judiciary.
Well, before we can ever get to a point where Nigerians repose confidence in the judiciary, then the judiciary itself has to do a whole lot of house cleaning. And one of such, if you take your mind back to some of the cases that have been decided upon this time, even the lawyers themselves found it difficult to understand the interpretation by, you know, the justices of the Federation. So if those who have sat through law 7 years in school, go through law school, and have gotten different certifications as far as law and related studies is concerned, are finding it difficult to understand the new spate of interpretation of the law, what is the common Nigerian going to think? What would be the standpoint of the average Nigerian? So if we're going to get to a point where Nigeria have confidence, which of course has been reiterated by the two retired justices, that it's about time for the judiciary to gain back the trust of Nigerians, gain back the confidence of Nigerians. The judiciary needs to get to a point where we see strict adherence, the flow of interpretation, not Justice A interprets the law in this pattern, Justice B picks up that same law, interprets it in a different pattern, Justice C picks the same law, interprets it in a completely different pattern. So you find three justices of the Federal Republic of Nigeria interpreting one law in three different ways.
Just like we're now currently seeing how, you know, the uploading of results electronically by INEC for tomorrow's election has been somehow declared illegal. And like we asked yesterday, who are the judges that sat, or the National Assembly lawmakers that sat to review that particular thing? So it just means like more like these justices, or now the representation and the perception in the minds of most Nigerians is that, I mean, these people are interpreting the law to suit whatever, you know, they have at the back of their minds.
So it's basically about who pays the piper, as Nigerians would say, and many people would allege. But because if it is not so, we should have a uniformity in the interpretation. I mean, every single justice of the Federal Republic of Nigeria went to the same law school. They went to, you know, they studied law, went to law school, and the different courses they have done has been bordered about, you know, interpreting the constitutions, the laws in Nigeria. So when we now find these dissenting views from the courtroom and from the revered justices, it raises a whole lot of dust. It raises a whole lot of questions. And until the judiciary is able to address those concerns, it is going to be very difficult for the average Nigerian man or woman to trust the judiciary. But we do hope that, you know, that Attorney General of the Federation, the federal government, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is able to put its feet down and do due diligence and ensure that what needs to be done for the judiciary to stand independent and for Nigerians to repose confidence in the judiciary is done holistically, because that will to a large extent save the country from all of the dramas, save the federal government, the presidency from always coming to try to defend a court verdict or a court judgment, whether it's in favor of the federal government or the presidency or not.
All right, let's just take a quick break there and head on straight to our major stories for this morning.
Rise and shine. Rise and shine.
Yes, of course, it's still Rise and Shine, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria, the Friday edition, where we like to relax a little bit, talk about lifestyle, but then there's so much more still happening in the country, and we need to look into that. Of course, like we said earlier, the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has traveled out of the country to Saudi Arabia, where he's having some summits to speak to other heads of nations, of course. But Nigeria and Saudi Arabia have signed a memorandum of understanding to promote collaboration, information exchange, and technology transfer in the oil sector. Now, the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources announced this. It stated that the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Oil, Senator Henikan Lokwobiri, signed on behalf of the federal government, while the Energy Minister of Saudi Arabia, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, signed for his country. The key purpose of the MOU is to promote collaboration, information exchange, and technology transfer, thereby creating a conducive environment for mutually beneficial partnership between these agencies, of course. Now, one of the primary benefits anticipated from this MOU for both sides is the facilitation of technological exchange.
Well, of course, Saudi Arabia has been one of the countries that, has advanced technologically and has been known to explore a whole lot of options when it comes to energy, fuel, and, consistently growing its economy. At a point in Nigeria when President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is looking forward to having a lot more foreign direct investment, such agreement and MOU is definitely one that Nigerians would appreciate. Of course, the exchange of technical expertise is definitely poised to elevate the efficiency and effectiveness of Nigeria's energy operations, ultimately also contributing to increased production levels and global competitiveness. Of course, we see that Nigeria has been at the forefront of bringing investment to further diversify the oil and gas sector, and Saudi Arabia, being a key player in the global energy market, of course, hold the potential to significantly help Nigeria to achieve its goals. You're looking at the possibility of stimulating economic growth. You're looking at the possibility of increasing the statistics and indices when it comes to job creation. You're looking at infrastructural development and, of course, the inflow of capital to bolster the petroleum industry, but also not forgetting the fact that various sectors of the economy which contributes to the overall growth of Nigeria's prosperity, apart from the petroleum sector, will also be experiencing a beehive of activities, which would also lead to a lot of people having employment and in turn paying taxes and in turn also growing the revenue of Nigeria. But one thing is holistically, good about this. Different MOUs have been signed by the present administration so far. We've seen those signed in the past. Nigerians will tell you, yes, as much as we appreciate the efforts of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, as much as we appreciate the steps taken so far by this present administration, what guarantee do we have that the implementation is going to spiral out to affect the generality of Nigerians? What guarantee do we have that in the next 1 year, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, which is the target of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, when Nigerians look back into the first 3 years of his administration as he's winding down, we're going to see the indices changing. We're going to see, as a result of this kind of MOU with the Saudi Arabian government, that Nigeria has been able to record say XYZ number of unemployed individuals have been taken off the streets. These businesses have come into Nigeria, and of course the country has been able to generate XYZ revenue as a result of this singular MOU. Now, when we are able to assess the different MOUs individually to know how much they've brought into the country, to know how much employment has been achieved, or employment quota has been achieved as a result of this particular MOU, and then you calculate it around the different business deals and cooperations, a bilateral business agreement between the federal government of Nigeria and other countries of the world. We now put those together and see how much has been achieved. That is when Nigerians can be able to measure the activities of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the impact of the business and bilateral relations that have been signed over time. Unless we get to then, and if we're not able to access those, then it is just still going to amount to audio bilateral relations as far as Nigerians is concerned. Until we can piggyback and see the people who have been employed, see the people who have been taken off the streets, see the businesses who have thrived and flourished as a result of these deals, then it's still going to be press statement. For now, Nigerians appreciate the move, but we wait to see how the implementation is going to be.
We know that something that this administration is also working on is how we can incorporate local talents to produce better, to do better for themselves. I mean, we are trying to be a self-sustaining government, as it were. And of course, this MOU being signed by the president and the leadership of Saudi Arabia is seen as a holistic approach to actually empower local talents within Nigeria's energy sector. Of course, fostering a self-sustaining environment where indigenous expertise plays a pivotal role in shaping the nation's energy future. Of course, the ministry stated that the one thing we also see is that the MOU outlines a commitment to environmental sustainability and responsible resource management. We know that the world of our conversations of moving from fossil fuel to other greener energies is something that is on the front burner. So we know that energy summits like this are meetings where the leaders of nations actually will sit down and see how exactly they can cut off dependence on fossil fuel, just so that things can bounce back, and the world at large will be a safer place for us to stay in. But Mr. President is in Saudi Arabia, signing some more dotted lines, and of course we do hope, like you said, that this translates into really strong things for Nigeria. Of course, it is a one-day summit where the president will hold bilateral talks with Saudi kingdom leaders and businessmen to position Nigeria maximally for opportunities within the framework of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Of course, the expectation is that by 2050, Africa's market size would have surpassed $29 trillion. Of course, the House of Saud, the ruling Saudi family, control currently a fortune conservatively estimated to be about $1.4 trillion. The kingdom has a general GDP of $2.25 trillion and over $68,000 GDP per capita in 2023 alone. Yes, when it looks like the world over, the economic situation is batting, but these are good indices that have been put up there by other nations, and Nigeria is working overtime to make sure that it does beat the target.
Well, Nigeria definitely has the potential, and we also have the resources. What is left is the political will and the leadership capacity to be able to harness all of the potential that we have in terms of human and natural resources, and then, of course, strike good business deals and negotiations to help us, grow the different subsectors of Nigeria's economy, and then be able to lift Nigerians out of the poverty situations that is sinking us on a daily basis. Does President Ahmed Bola Tinubu have the capacity? A lot of people would say yes, he does have. Their move made so far by this present administration that will be able to, or that is capable of catapulting the different ministries, departments and agencies of government, and help negotiations and closing of these business deals that will help, shoot Nigeria or bring to bear the much touted renewed hope agenda of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. Of course, the possibility is there. So what Nigerians are waiting for is the implementation. We could say congratulations, Mr. President. Great deals being signed. Let's come back to Nigeria. Let's finalize and let's look at bringing those deals to life so Nigerians can see and witness the impact of the deals being signed on behalf of the Nigerian people. But we move away from that to another story this morning. As far as Nigeria is concerned, we are no longer strangers in this country to the fact that people in position of authority within government ministries, departments, and agencies seem to have grown bigger than the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, seems to have grown bigger than the National Assembly that is saddled with the responsibility to make laws. We see that the Senate has urged President Ahmed Bola Tinubu to sack heads of MDAs that have shunned summons over time. Now, this is one conversation that Nigerians have said is long overdue. When people who have been entrusted with the public fund are invited to give account of what the funds that have been allocated to their ministries, to their agencies, to their departments were used for, fail to show up to answer questions or to even present the account of the money that is not theirs, the money that belongs to Nigeria, to Nigerians, that was entrusted to them for one project or the other. You call them to show up for investigation, you call them to make account, these people don't show up. And over time, the president, whose hands, whose authority has been that put them there, remains silent. The presidency remains silent. So this is one move that Nigerians have appreciated. But then there's another big question. Are we going to see the implementation coming from President Ahmed Bola Tinubu? Because if we do not, the implementation process lies with the president. The National Assembly can make the call, summon or give the directive to the federal government. But if the federal government, through the leadership of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, does not yield to those urges or those directives by the National Assembly, we are going nowhere.
Well, let's see how they're going to interpret these things to best suit the needs that we have in the country right now. Of course, that move has been made by the Senate, asking the president to sack the heads of MDAs that shun summons. So it's more like it's becoming a day-to-day thing. The National Assembly, I mean, the likes of Caruso of the CBN have recently been invited. Better I Do of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Poverty Alleviation has recently been invited. A couple more other people that maybe the National Assembly thinks that there is a question as to how they are adjudicating their duties have been called in, some of which haven't honored this invitation. And then I believe that the Senate is thinking that this may become a larger-than-life problem in the future when everyone knows that, oh, if they send for you, you do not really have to go there because there is nothing that will happen. But it looks like they are thinking of ways to setting penalties. But even if you're talking about setting penalties, I think that the biggest one will actually be to sack the head of these MDAs. But is this the best approach to solving the problem of accountability within the State House?
Well, if you're being summoned to appear before a committee that is set up to investigate issues that borders on accountability and transparency in the usage of funds that is meant for the public good, and then you fail to show up, I think it's Nigerians would agree to a large extent is a good step. The first step to be taken is to be fired. When you're fired, then of course you can get under investigation, you get arrested. Because we've seen, let's look at some of the key figures in Nigeria. The likes of the immediate chairman of the EFCC would never have been picked up if he was still in his position as a chairman. The likes of Godwin Emefiele would never have been picked up if he was still the CBN governor. So maybe the first step that needs to be taken is for people who are entrusted with this responsibility to be fired. After being fired, then the security agencies, the anti-graft agencies will swing into action. It literally looks like once people are still in position of authority, they're still in charge of their respective positions, the security agencies, the anti-graft agencies are incapable of reaching out. It looks like there's some level of immunity, some immunity that Nigerians are not aware of that is attached to every member of a cabinet or board of trustees or any of the MDAs in government, that once you're entitled with the position, you have immunity. The anti-graft agency cannot touch you. The security agencies cannot touch you until you are taken out. So if that is the perceived perception on the minds of Nigerians, first, let's get them out. Get them out of the office, then the investigation. That question they had refused to answer while they were in office honorably, they will now do it dishonorably in the prison cells or while in the custody of the anti-grav
But
agencies.
wouldn't that have taken a lot more time out of some of the solutions that these sitting committees hope to achieve? I mean, when you're looking at, for instance, the probe that is to be done into how the COVID-19, wages and, grants were spent in the country, so far so good. COVID-19, that strong impact of it is over. When you summon them this time, it can even really still just look like a joke, because are we going to look for ways to regenerate those incomes, or maybe that hidden away somewhere? Then we start going back all the way to 2021, where we had the impact of the COVID-19. So there's a lot of summons. And then I think one of the problems that we also see here is, if a ministry, a director is being invited by the National Assembly Sitting Committee on probes, and they fail to appear, it leaves a lot of room for questioning as to how you are culpable in the act that they're calling you for or not. Because if we can't come out and just explain that with this allocation that was given to us, XYZ, other things that we did, this is how much we have in the reserves, then it's going to be a major problem. But calling on the presidency to see how that this can be done, let's see if it's something that he even buys at all. And is this kind of call also left just with the NBA boss at this time?
Well, however you're going to look at it, if you have a clear conscience and you know that as a leader saddled with the responsibility to lead the people within the office that you've been entrusted with, that the funds allocated to your agency, to your ministries, to your department was, utilized for the purposes it was meant for, and you've kept account of those, which by all measure you were supposed to. There is literally no reason for any appointee of government to refuse to appear for investigation. All you're being asked to do is come and tell us XYZ amount was sent to your ministries, to your department. How was it utilized? This is the purpose it was sent for. How did you utilize it? How did you use it to achieve this goal? Okay, you've used it. To what extent have you been able to achieve the goal? What is lacking? And how can the government further continue with this program? So for you to even say or refuse to go, you cannot even give the excuse that these guys don't have the time. Because you find them using that same time they claim not to have to appear at the National Assembly or for, in the panels to answer questions. You find them using that same time to do some very funny things that does not in any way connect to the offices that they occupy. So that is not even an excuse. I think the Nigerian people believe that if the National Assembly is able to put forth its ground, and then, of course, the executive, through the leadership of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is able to also address this concern, we'll have people, waking up to their responsibilities. The absence of punishment has made some people in government to be behave like emperors, like demigods, and they feel they are untouchable, they feel they are not reachable, they feel like nobody can ask them or hold them accountable. And the only group of persons who are to hold these people accountable are the National Assembly, who are elected to represent Nigerians. So if the average Nigerian cannot, Nigerian cannot walk up to them and ask questions, the National Assembly should be able to ask questions, and they should be able to hold, to go before the National Assembly to answer those questions. And in the event that they fail, there should be a punitive measures. Only then will we be able to achieve some result.
Well, only then can we be able to achieve results. Let's hope that we can actually get some of these things that we are talking about. But it's about time to head to the newsroom desk. Sorry, I beg your pardon. It's time for us to get the daily spotlight, looking at the front pages of our national dailies this morning until we ride all the way to Mary Joseph, who will be on standby for us this morning. Let's see what the front pages of our papers are saying.
Well, on Daily Spotlight this morning, we're starting off with the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. And On the front page of Nigerian Tribune, we see the kicker that says Imo, Kogi, Bayelsa elections, military, police warn troublemakers. That story is on page 2 and page 8. The writer says DSS cautions against inflammatory statements. ICPC deploys operatives, threatens clampdown on electoral corruption. Deliver flawless election in Imo. Southeast traditional rulers, religious leaders tax INEC. Page 2 and page 8 has a story. Still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, MTEF, Sean Senate invitation, lose your job. Akpabio tells Tinubu's appointees. Whole ministers, MDAs responsible for delaying passage of 2024 budget. Reps tell Nigerians. That story is on page 25 of the Nigerian Tribune. Passengers stranded as protesting unions block airports entrances. That story is on page 12. Nigeria has highest cement price in the world. Producers tax federal government on inclusion of new players to end monopoly, increase supply. That story is on page 29 of the Nigerian Tribune. Still on the front page of Nigerian Tribune, we see Alafin stole again. Oyomesi in court files fresh suit against Makinde others. The story is on page 12. UBA, Saudi Exim Bank partner to enhance business relations, export growth. Page 7 has a story. IGP redeploys 14 AIGs, 26 CPs. That story is on page 27. Russia-Ukraine war affecting Nigeria's crude oil inflows, NNPCL. Story is on page 6. And those are the major stories you'll find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Very next up is the Daily Trust, and the big story there says 24 hours to polls. Igala elders call for postponement. Women protest in Bayelsa. Travelers miss flights as labor grounds Imo-bound planes. IGP storms Kogi. Military raises alarm on fake soldiers. Labor action inconsiderate, not treasonable, says Yadudu. Protests won't hamper Saturday election, says INEC. DSS reads riot acts to troublemakers. Page 16 is where you want to really check out the riot act as released by the DSS. Also see here students threaten strike over tuition hike in Ogun State. Page 16. CJTF commanders, 4 others killed in Borno mine blast. We also have here federal government of resettlement homes for, federal government flags of resettlement homes for Benue IDPs. Explosion, Canada says visa centers in Abuja, Lagos remain open. We also see here 59 mosques destroyed in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. 14.3 trillion naira remitted to Federation account in 2 years. That's all that we have on the front page of the Daily Trust.
And next up this morning is the front page of the Nation newspaper. The kicker there says, Uzodima Keyamo CSOs, labor protest partisan. Osifo, we won't stop. Passengers stranded at Abuja, Lagos Airport. That story is on page 29 of the Nation newspaper. We also see still there, Bayelsa Imo Kogi 2023, all set for elections. Military warns miscreants to stay off. DSS cautions against inflammatory statements. Hotel scarcity leave INEC officials, security agents stranded. That story is on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. Nigeria's oil supply to Europe hit 730,000 barrels per day. Story is on page 7. Senate seeks sack of MDA bosses ignoring summons, motions. Stories on page 3. Umahi explains 21 billion naira vote for third mainland repairs. Page 3. Wike remains my principal, Governor Fubara declares. Page 4 has a story. Nigeria, Saudi Arabia signed MOU on oil, gas investment. Stories on page 6. And of course, Yoruba in diaspora to Tinubu, eradicate poverty. Stories on page 9. IGP redeploys 14 AIGs, 26 CPs. Adeleke presents 273 billion naira proposed budget. Stories on page 29, and those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nation this morning.
Moving away from the Nation, let's look at the Punch newspaper. Off-season polls is still a big discussion. Tomorrow is already D-Day, and federal government tackles labor over strike. Unions disrupt Imo flights. We also see here, don't allow Labour Party destroy NLC TUC. Minister condemns airports picketing. INEC insists on polls. Unions stop Owerri flights, block Abuja Airport. United Nigeria Airlines airpiece passengers stranded. We also see here energy FG Saudi signed MOU, Exim Bank, UBA partner on trade. 40 AIG commissioners redeployed in police shake-up. Nigerian shot by Togolese soldier, 6 Tinubu's help. We also see here Fasoranti at Debanjos of any fairy factions clash over Supreme Court. We also have here on the front page of the Punch, border closure, business collapse in northern communities, smuggling booms. Very sad story there. We also see here crude exports to Europe rise, federal government boosts local supply. Budget hearings, Senate demands sacking of MDA heads. Like we've said this morning, let's see if that is something that they can actually move to do to sack the heads of these MDAs. Well, we see the likes of IGP Egbetokun putting in the work to shake up the Nigeria police force so that no one has an attachment to where he has been serving, and by that, doing, you can easily be corrupted.
Well, we do hope that, all these statements and comment coming from leaders of the Nigerian society are adhered to. I mean, if we follow the good examples, implement the good steps, then Nigeria would be better off for those decisions and the implementation thereof. But this is where we take a short pause and head out to the news brief decks where Mary Joseph is standing by to take us on. Please stay with us.
Rise and shine.
For brilliant broadcasts and entertainment, sports on the go, and news around the world, watch Spectrum TV on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and free-to-air frequency 12733. Visit our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Every day marks a day of significance.
That in view of the apology tendered by this former minister who had earlier been cleared by this August Assembly,
as we face critical issues, developments and events which shape our social and political landscape here in Nigeria and beyond. Political Spectrum is a program specially designed to help make sense of all the moving parts of developments and occurrences in our nation's polity and political economy.
There is nothing wrong with Nigeria, but there's everything wrong.
The educational history of public figures holds significance beyond mere biographical details.
From executive, legislative and judicial developments at national and subnational levels to international diplomacy and relations.
Join us for exclusive interviews with key political figures, expert opinions, analysts, thought-provoking conversations for and against, shedding light on the major issues that matter. We will always keep you updated on the most factual, smartest and unbiased reportage.
Stay tuned to Political Spectrum. Political Spectrum. All sides matter at the round table. Political Spectrum. exclusive to Spectrum Television.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for SpectrumTv to recover for the lapses
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
voting for SpectrumTv to recover for the lapses
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief and Spectrum live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. First in the news this morning, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, says the electoral umpire has no candidates in the November 11, 2023 governorship polls in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. In a statement late Thursday, the electoral chief pledged to ensure a level playing field for all political parties and candidates in the election. He also promised the readiness of the commission is determined to ensure that the officials are there waiting for voters rather than the voters waiting for the commission's arrival. Meanwhile, the military high command said it has uncovered a plan by some persons to wear military uniforms to disrupt elections in some areas where the election will be held. This is as the military said it was massively deployed for the off-cycle elections on Saturday. The Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Buba Edward, disclosed this during a press briefing in Abuja on Thursday. He warned such persons to shield the plan or face an injurious consequence. Buba said the military would not fold its arms and watch its image be dragged into the mud. Off to the parliament issues, where the Senate President Godswill Akpabio has said that other countries will learn from Nigeria after 50 years of democracy. He said this when he received the Irish ambassador to Nigeria, Peter Ryan, in his office in Abuja. According to Akpabio, the 59th president of the Interparliamentary Union, Nigeria needs a lot of assistance, collaboration and bonding to learn from other democratic nations like Ireland. The Senate President also spoke about the spate of kidnappings across the country, particularly in the Niger Delta. He said the menace has abated largely through the efforts of the previous administration. On the foreign scene, the White House has said that Israel has agreed to daily 4-hour pauses in northern Gaza to let civilians flee, even as President Joe Biden said there was no chance of a full ceasefire. Biden has been pressing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for longer breaks in the fighting after more than a month of war sparked by the October 7th attacks by Hamas. Reports say the Israeli troops and Hamas are now locked in heavy close-quarters fighting in Gaza City in the north of the Gaza Strip. And in sports, the Super Eagles will be without Napoli hitman Victor Osimhen and Leicester City midfield Maestro Ndidi for the team's 2026 World Cup qualifiers against the Harambee Stars of Zimbabwe and the Crocodiles of Lesotho. Nigeria's squad list for the November encounters was released late Thursday by the Nigerian Football Federation (NFF). A snapshot of the list shows Nigeria are heading into the games with 23 players as they begin their quest for a place in the global football fiesta built for the US, Mexico and Canada. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's get back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and we are here on standby. Do have a wonderful weekend.
Secretary General, as of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
voting for SpectrumTv to recover for the lapses
For brilliant broadcasts and entertainment, sports on the go, and news around the world, watch Spectrum TV on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and free-to-air frequency 12733. Visit our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Rise and shine.
Welcome back. It's still Friday morning, and this is the Friday edition of Rise and Shine. We're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa State, Nigeria. Of course, Mary Joseph just took us through tidbits of global news this morning, and we've already had some conversations on the show this morning. Military, of course, adopts gender policy to protect women and children during conflict. We also see the fact that police has identified 5 violence-prone local governments in Bayelsa ahead of tomorrow's elections. We do hope that the Nigeria Police Force will be able to clamp down and get everything to run smoothly tomorrow. We also saw the fact that Justice Alaba Omolaye has urged the public against perceiving justice from the prism of sentiments. Of course, they're asking that everyone settles down to know that judgment follows a due course of the Constitution. And we also see that the president is currently in Saudi Arabia for a one-day visit and summit, where he's already signed an MOU on energy cooperation with the Saudi government. And we also see here that there is a move by the Senate asking the president to sack heads of MDAs as a result of some form of lack of accountability. These and more are some of the conversations we've already had on Rise and Shine this morning. For you to catch up on all of that, you need to follow us across all our social media platforms. We're currently streaming live on YouTube, as we do across all other programs. So if you just joined in the middle of the program and you would want to catch up with everything we have done before you joined in, you can get all of that detail and information on our YouTube channel. Just check for Spectrum Television and make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. But up on our conversation this morning, we're going to be looking at several sides to the elections tomorrow happening in 3 states. The off-season elections holding in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa states. A lot of things are happening. In most states, there are strong contenders between the APC, the People's Democratic Party, and maybe some other parties just tailing just on third. Let's see what preparations are on ground and what are the expectations for the elections tomorrow. Let's throw open our phone lines at this time, and let's see if we can get Nigerians from Imo State, Kogi State, and Bayelsa this morning to tell us how the atmosphere of preparation is for them toward the elections tomorrow. Let's also know what are your thoughts generally in all that we have continued to talk about, the preparations of INEC, all of the information, the preparation of the Nigeria Police Force. What are your thoughts with regards to these off-season election that will be holding tomorrow across 3 states?
Well, so far in Bayelsa State, we have, top contenders, apart from Temi Priya Silva of the APC, who is like the highest top contending candidate for the election. Standing against the incumbent PDP Governor Senator Doyo Diri. Yeah, we also see the likes of the Labour Party making a run for the office under the personality of Iradiri Odemo Bofa, who is the governorship candidate for the Labour Party. Have the likes of Ben Victor Mobodo for the BP Party, APP Party Ogege Kemalaya for Mercy, who's standing there. That's a female. We have for ABGA Subiri Waribodi Joseph standing for the people there. Of course, the other political parties still have their candidates, the likes of Simon Imomo Timi Kirioku, Osuluku Binelayafe of the SDP. Of course, different politicians all standing. And when you look at the portfolios of these different candidates, you look at their credibility, you look at their qualification, you look at how much they've been in politics. A good number of them have been in politics from way back 2012 in Bayelsa State, and they've occupied different positions within their respective local government areas and constituencies. But the top contenders still remain Silva and of course the incumbent governor of Bayelsa State. But one thing that we've touched on rather this morning, we need to really just emphasize, particularly speaking to the Bayelsa people at this point in time. It was the former president, Federal Republic of Nigeria, one-time deputy governor of Bayelsa State, then governor of Bayelsa State, very own Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, who had said that no political aspiration of Nigerians or political aspiration of a politician is worth the blood of any Nigerian. Now, if you look at that comment, I think this is the part where we have to re-echo it. Hello, good morning. Welcome to Rise and Shine. I think we lost connection there. We do definitely hope that you can get to call back. The phone numbers are very much on your screen. I would like to hear from Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa people what they think about the off-season elections. I know that, just as I was saying before the call came in, at this point in time, we need Bayelsa youths, we need Imo youths, we need Kogi youths to understand that no political aspiration of any of these individuals deserve your blood to be wasted. You typically will have to ask yourself a question. Would these politicians send their children out to perpetrate violence that probably would lead them, to being arrested? If your answer is yes, then you can go ahead. The second question, will they be at the forefront of leading the fight for ballot vote snatching or any electoral offenses? If your answer is yes, then you can reconsider. But if your answer to the first and second question is no, then you definitely understand that if there is anything that you need to do as a citizen of Federal Republic of Nigeria is to go out, exercise your franchise, wait and watch to see the end of the election in your polling unit, the election results being counted, and then of course you can also take stocks before heading back. But when it comes to violence or any act that will put you at par with the law enforcement agency, of course, we've seen the huge number of personnel that have been released by the Nigerian Police Force, the Nigerian Army, the Civil Defense Corps, Federal Road Safety. We've also seen the ICPC also, releasing its personnel still to monitor electoral offenses and the engagement of people in these three states where we will be having elections tomorrow, being November 11th. So the eyes of the Nigerian people, the eyes of the world is still on these three states. And I'd like to, also re-echo the comment made by Abdul Salami Abubakar's led committee when you're talking about the need for people to embrace peace, to embrace, unity, to embrace not making comments capable of causing, breakdown of law and order. Now, we know that conversations, arguments between oppositions are always going to come up, when we're trying to get the other to believe in a political party or a political party's interest. But when you're trying to protect the interests of your political party, when you're trying to project the image of your party, do not do it in such a way that, it will lead to the breakdown of violence. But we also see, coming from the leadership of INEC this morning, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, while reacting to still calls made by people for the electoral umpire, INEC now to redeploy the resident electoral commissioners in those three states who are having election tomorrow. Mahmoud has insisted that as far as INEC is concerned, INEC does not have a candidate who is standing for election in Bayelsa, in Kogi, or in Imo State. And so all the political parties who have registered their candidates all have their candidates. And so INEC has no grounds, according to Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, to actually conduct, carry out redeployment of the resident electoral commissioners But we'd like to hear from you again. Do you think this is a good move made by INEC under the leadership of Professor Mahmood Yakubu? Because we are asking, for instance, in Imo State, we have a coalition of Ohaneze Ndibo. We have different civil society organizations. We've had also the political parties, the PDP and other political parties calling on the resident electoral commissioner of Imo State to be removed. They're calling on INEC to follow suit. The move by the Inspector General of Police, Kaide Betokun, that has redeployed the police commissioner to follow suit in that regard. Now, do you also think, in the event that, the elections is already tomorrow and INEC is maintaining its standpoint that it's not going to redeploy the INEC resident electoral commissioner in any of the states, especially Imo State, do you think that this will possibly lead to more litigations coming out after the elections, in the event that, regardless of the drama playing out in Imo State, and we're particular with Imo State because we are looking at a scenario where, the workers in Imo States are being maltreated, mistreated, and that maltreatment and mistreatment has led to the manhandling of the NLC president, Joe Ajaero, which of course has brought to Nigeria a whole lot of negative image. We're also looking at the allegations coming from Doyodiri that the labor unions were in Imo State to canvass for support for the leadership or the gubernatorial candidate of the Labour Party in the state. Now, what is the connection between labor matters, between the fact that the Imo State government has not paid salaries of workers for months, and the agitation and the strike that is currently happening in Imo State? Remember, this morning, aviation is suffering already because of the strike that kick-started yesterday. And there are still calls across board for that sustained strike. We saw Festus Keyamo coming to blast the organized labor, the TUC and the NLC, over the strike happening in Imo State. And it's saying that, is alleging that the NLC leadership and TUC have become partisan in their activism and activities to protect the rights of Nigerian workers. But let's be realistic and let's be honest with ourselves. Does the fact that Hope Uzodinma has been the governor of Imo State for these 4 years, and yet we're seeing salaries of workers being owed in months, suggest in any way that the agitations of labor is a partisan activity? These are different concerns that are being raised, but of course, the bulk of the responsibility rests with the people of Imo State, it rests with the people of Bayelsa State, it rests with the people of Kogi State to decide who among the contending people who are seeking for election or re-election into the #1 position they would want to give their vote for, knowing full well that whoever they choose is going to be the person they are going to have to deal with for the next 4 years.
Well, there's a lot to look out for, and then we are still looking at the contenders of these elections across different states. I know that in Imo State, for instance, INEC approved stands at 18 persons going for that particular seat, and of course, Hope Uzodinma is an incumbent that is going to have that same position again, but quite a number of persons, 18 persons, going for that particular seat. And Hope Uzodinma is of okay, we also have, no, sorry, I'm trying to get my numbers right, but majorly I think the concern with Imo State right now is with these recent happenings where with Joe Ajaero, and it seems to just have tweaked the policy in the state for a little bit. But let's see how this is going to go with regards to elections tomorrow. And moving to Kogi State now, Francis just talked extensively about Imo State, but let's look at what is happening in Kogi State, especially because one of Nigeria's favorite senators, Dino Melaye, is going for that gubernatorial position under the umbrella of the People's Democratic Party, and we've already seen him promising that there's going to be a new Lokoja in the next 4 years. He said a new Lokoja is going to be emerging in the next 4 years. I know he's one of the top contenders for that seat in Kogi State, and we also have a gentleman who is of the AA. Let me get that very correctly. We also have this gentleman who is from the AA party, Buraimo. Of course, Buraimo is a new face, more like he's coming with an external air. It's just like who did we recently have in elections? Is this in Akwa Ibom State now, where it's like you're importing a mercenary to come and attempt to lead? What political precedents have you had before now? But of course, Bremo believes that he has what it takes to lead the people of Kogi State. And one of the things he has prided himself in doing is the fact that he seems to have put up some coalition and strong relationship between other parties and the elder statesmen of the state. He's promising that governorship in Kogi State is going to be something to look out for under his dispensation. So I know that Buraimo is a strong contender in the Kogi State election with Dino Melai, as it were. But what are the thoughts of Kogites this morning with regards to all of this? Now, this is not a bet kind of issue. We just want to know how our election proceedings going in Kogi, how is it going in Imo State, how is it going in Bayelsa. Generally, Nigerians, what do we really think about these off-season elections? Francis always likes to say that this is a litmus test and an opportunity for INEC to salvage themselves out of all of the perception that Nigerians did have about them in the just concluded February and March election. But then, of course, we've already seen INEC having some conversations that's pretty much doesn't encourage Nigerians to see no new light out of them. Top of which would be the fact that there's still that discrepancy and controversy of how results are going to be uploaded, what means what now in the country. Remember, for those who follow Rise and Shine very closely, yesterday we had said and seen the fact that INEC had said that uploading results or electronically as it stands is illegal in Nigeria. By the time you introduce the word illegal into the whole system, it topples up a lot of things. But what are the expectations of Nigerians in these off-season elections that are coming tomorrow? We are still trying to give you a rundown of who is who in the elections come tomorrow in these different states. I'm looking at of course, Imo State, of course, has the Accord Party. One of the contestants there is Okere John Jude Uchenna. His deputy is Ibe Kenechuku. We also have the Action Alliance, Ogunwe Lincoln Kenyon Mary. And I'll try as much as possible not to murder anybody's name this morning. And his deputy is Ukenna Masa Onoha. From the AAC, we have that's AAC's African Action Congress. We have Omulolu Emmanuel Ifanya and his deputies Conry and Michael. But it looks like, Francis, we didn't have so many women pop in this off-cycle election in any of the states.
Well, it is not news. It is nothing new. Most times we don't oftentimes have a lot of the women gender contesting for top positions. But we do hope we get to that point in Nigeria. All of the contenders in Imo State are all vying for one position, and whether or not you like it, there are those who came to party, and there are those who came to play, and there are those who came to just show face that they also contested for the elections. That is where the categorization will come. But as far as the Imo State people are concerned, you have the PDP, you have the APC, you have the Labour Party, which seems to be the very strongest
top three.
Top three at this moment. Other political parties also have their contenders, but we'll have to watch and see how that goes. But moving over to Kogi State, we know that Dino Malaya of the PDP is one of the strong contender. We have Ahmed Usman Ododo, which of course is another strong contender, and we see also Adejo Kome, the three of them happening to be the three top contenders. If you look at the lives of
you don't think that Brian Olayinka Adenhon is a strong contender That's from the Action Alliance.
Well, this four, it all depends on the areas. Some persons would say the three. When you look at the first top three, maybe this person, what's his name again?
Brimo
would come on the fourth bench when you're categorizing it. But if you look at the history of Ahmed Usman, for instance, he's been a former Auditor General of the state. He's been engaged in philanthropic activities. He's been in within the corridors of power, and he has that political background. He has the goodwill of the people because of his philanthropic gestures as well, that will be speaking up for him. And then you look at the person of Dino Malaya and all that he's also been able to do for himself.
Existence in the corridors.
And within the corridors of power. He's also somebody who is very well grounded, politically speaking, and also enjoys some level of goodwill on the part of the Kogi people. And then it goes back to Adejo Kome, also a very strong politician. All of these people have some achievements under their belt to boast of for the people of Kogi State to be able to choose them. But then the question many people are still asking, as far as Kogi, for instance, is concerned, Dino Malaya of the PDP, and then of course the other political parties, who is going to take the day? The APC seems literally to say they are going to have a clean sweep across the three states of the federation that is going to have elections tomorrow. Remember, the APC national chairman Nujat said they were ready to ensure that they get election across the three states. That's talking about if you go to Bayelsa State, that means Silva will actually have to win the incumbent who is currently sitting in power, Doyediri. You go to Imo State, it means that the personality of Uzodinma will have to win against all odds, despite the challenges happening in Imo State, despite the fact that he's mistreated workers in Imo State. And then of course you go down to Kogi. So the consensus is around the clock, and the generality of the eyes of the Nigerian people, the Kogi State, the Imo people, and of course Bayelsans are on the electoral umpire. Will we see INEC being able to deliver, free, fair, credible, and conclusive elections at this point in time? We're already seeing highlights of flash red zones in Bayelsa State. Let's not wake up before the end of today, and the Nigerian security forces are telling us it is not just in Bayelsa. We're also having flashpoints in Imo. We're also having flashpoints in Kogi State. But the Imo State scenario is already worrisome at this point. You're talking about the strike. If that we read during the course of Delhi Spotlight, some of the newspaper headlines talking about the fact that INEC officials, security agencies are stranded because of lack of accommodation. So when INEC officials are stranded, the first questions Nigerians would ask is, what happens to their security? What happens to their safety? And then of course you're looking at how protected are the sensitive materials that are going to be used for elections tomorrow. And when you put all of these indices together, it raises the question. I think it's in Bayelsa State that the elders are calling for elections to not be held.
It's in Imo State.
It's Imo State, rather.
Yes, Imo State.
The elders are saying, let's suspend the election until all of this drama is over and done with. And when you look at that call by the elders, one would see a deep level of wisdom in it. I mean, you can't have activities being shut down. You can't have workers go on strike. That definitely is an indication that there's going to be a whole lot of voter apathy. A lot of people who are supposed to come out to vote might not be coming out to vote. And when people who are supposed to come out to vote do not come out to vote, it raises another concern. But then we also need to speak to the minds of the Imo people. If you're a worker, for instance, and you're saying, because of the maltreatment of Hobo Zadima as the governor of the APC-led administration in the last 4 years, I'm not going out to vote. Because of X, Y, Z, the recent narrative within the Nigerian judiciary, who are you harming in the
You're
long
still
run?
empowering Hopo Zodima to sit on that seat one way or the other if you don't go out to make sure that your vote counts. I think that's one thing that the people of Imo must know. One vote for, one vote against, and that vote that did not come to the ballot. It's speaking for or against someone who makes it out at the end of the day. And if we evaluate Hope Uzodima's work ethic and delivery for the Imo people in the last 4 years, and it is termed unsatisfactory, especially for the working population of Imo State, then taking advantage of the polls is one tool that they have. But I think you raised a really big question. If the elder statesmen, or for whatever reason these elections in Imo rather, are asked to be stalled, Francis, remember that recently we talked about the billions of naira that the federal government sunk into INEC again for off-season elections. We are not saying that those billions of naira were given for general elections in the country, for off-season elections. Now we have to also think about the economic implication of having that election in Imo State moved, because logistics have already been sorted out, materials have already been bought and all of that. If they move that election tomorrow by any wind of doctrine and it is moved, what will this mean economically for the federal government? What will it mean for INEC also for this election to be moved? And when this election is moved away from, for instance, it is moved away from November, when next are we looking at that things are going to settle in Imo State for the elections to be held? I mean, we have barely 2 months for 2023 to be done and dusted. So at the end of the day, it is going to take, of course, INEC has already established that nothing is making them to move the elections in Imo State. So it is sacrosanct that elections are going to hold tomorrow. So, but at the end of the day, because today is still a working day, if those push become stronger and you look into Imo State and it doesn't look like there's going to be a place for you to put down your feet and let the polls hold, it means that INEC, the state government of Imo, and elder statesmen will really need to properly think this through to take the best possible decision for the citizens of the state.
Well, at this point in time, I think the only thing the Imo State people, Bayelsa people, and Kogi State people need to look out for is just to make sure that they go out en masse to vote for their respective candidates, because if they fail to do that, definitely somebody's going to emerge as the winner. And like you rightly stated, each vote either works for or against the person you want to succeed as the #1 citizen of the state. But we've seen that within the course of this week, all the comments coming from Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, the chairman of INEC, the likes of Bishop Cook has urged INEC not to complain of not having enough funds to run elections in these 3 states. You're also looking at the fact that 18 billion naira so far within the supplementary budget has just been signed into law by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is going to INEC. So there should be no excuse whatsoever for the elections not being able to be run in a weird manner that Nigerians will be satisfied, the different states will be satisfied that elections was free, fair and conclusive. Regardless of the fact that within the course of these preparations, electioneering period, we've seen the likes of Labour Party, PDP and other political parties staging a walkout because of the incidences and issues that they've alleged, particularly in Imo State. The truth of the matter remains that before we get to the point of cancelling election, we also have to consider the expenditure. We also have to consider what that would mean for succession, the period of succession. Let's say, for instance, Imo State election is suspended. When is it going to be conducted? It's pushed forward for 3 years or 3 more months, 1 more month, 2 more months, whatever that is. It definitely means that when these other 2 state governors will be, elapsing their tenure, Imo State will still be continuing. Already, it's already a problem because Nigeria should have started, or Nigeria started out with, all the states running their elections together. Now we are having disparity because of litigation, and it still goes back to the Nigerian judiciary and activities of the Nigerian judiciary. So I think a lot of Nigerians expect and believe that we need to allow INEC run the elections. We need to allow the resident electoral commission to stay where they are. But we also need to hold them accountable for whatever action is going to come under their leadership. And the best way for the Bayelsa people, the Imo people, the Kogi people to hold INEC responsible for Nigerians to continue is for them to go out en masse. Now, when you go out en masse, one thing that last election has shown us is that when you stay in your respective polling units and you are able to collate every party agent knows how many votes their party had across the respective polling unit. By the time the collation is done, with the picture evidences, because the focus now is on how much evidence you have that is credible. So first and foremost, go out to vote. That is your responsibility as a Nigerian. Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa, go out and vote en masse. And as you vote, ensure that you stand till the end of that voting process and the votes get counted. Possibly record videos like it was done during the just concluded elections across your polling
But
units.
Francis, Nigerians are still going to ask you, with all of those things that Nigerians did during the February 25 elections and the March elections, towards end, I mean, there were videos, there were streams, there were people who had, you know, their Form EC8 snapped and the detail of everything that happened in their polling units. How did it turn out differently? It still takes us back to the conversation that we just had out of the jury today. That, I mean, these verdicts are they're not called out of sentiment from the social media or, you know, any other space out of the judiciary for that matter. It's a major concern because we have to begin to talk about the impact of the just concluded election on the psyche of Nigerians with regards to elections and the judiciary in, you know, in election related matters. Tomorrow, when people go out in this state, are we going to have the kind of proactiveness that Nigerians put up February 25? People stood to the end, made sure they had their numbers. We had all kinds of trending videos coming out of all kinds of polling units, some form of accountability. But did it, you know, did it to a very large extent have an impact? Well, Nigerians will say no.
Well, in the defense of Nigerians, either way, whichever way you look at it, as the Labour Party presidential candidate, His Excellency Peter Obi has said, it is a process. The first one might not have yielded the kind of result that we wanted as a people, but does that mean we should stop? Of course the answer is no. And when you're also looking at the snapshots and evidences, I think one of the barristers, the legal expert we had on the show, Barrister Kevin Newton, did say it's not about the evidences that people posted up. How credible were those evidences? Let's take, for instance, how many of those evidences did party actually whipped up? It is one thing for you to say it was snapped. How many came from party agents? And let's not also forget the conversation that most party agents were compromised. And so they are the ones who should be giving the authentic evidences coming from the polling units, apart from the average Nigerian. So when the party agents sell out their party for their own personal interest, it breaks the chain of credibility because they are the first line of witnesses. So when all the party agents also stand the interest of their party and that of their people, then we are going to see a change in the narrative. But whether or not those things did play out in the just concluded cycle of judiciary proceedings, please, Nigerians, it is a process. You fail, you continue. One way or the other, we're going to get it right. But if we choose to decide and say, oh, based on public opinion, based on social media sensation, we did not have justice in the just concluded elections, contrary to what the court has declared, the truth of the matter remains the same, that we are going to be the ones losing. So we cannot have any excuse. The truth is, go out, vote, protect your vote. At the end of the day, we will get to see who the winner is. And when there are issues to be contended, you will have valid evidences to present before the law court. And then, of course, you have lawyers who will speak to those evidences. That is the only way to go. But we do hope that the off-season elections in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo State is conducted in a way that no Nigerian life will be lost.
Very important. And we also do hope that somehow, by some stroke of luck, these elections tomorrow do not end up with litigations upon litigations. Let's have the best day tomorrow as Nigerians step out in these three states. From the rest of, you know, the states in Nigeria, our prayers and our hopes are with you, the people of Kogi, Imo State, and Bayelsa. But this is the much we can do on the Friday edition of Rise and Shine today. Thank you for being a part of everything that we do on Spectrum Television and on Rise and Shine. Bye-bye. We'll see you again next week. My name remains Uyai Anekan.
And I am Francis Oyemedet. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend.